This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Tuesday, the 31st day of January. I thank you so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. You're in for a treat today. Those of you who caught this conversation in my morning show in Philadelphia today, it's worth hearing again. Those of you who have not heard this conversation yet, you gotta. It's with Mark Houck, and I will tell you that in my 20-plus years of broadcasting now, 20-something, I don't know that I will have ever or will ever conduct an interview that is as meaningful to me personally as this one. This has all the components of a faith-filled man of God, along with a guy who has been abused at the hands of his government and has taken both of those things and melded them into an amazing testimony and story that you're going to want to hear. He was just acquitted yesterday. If you don't know the story of Mark Houck, very briefly, this is a guy who has been a pro-life advocate. He has a family of 7, takes his kids often to stand outside Planned Parenthood clinics and offer prayer and support to women who are going to seek an abortion, never in harassing ways, never broken a law of any kind. Well, one day, a lunatic guy comes and gets in his face, starts screaming and yelling and swearing at his son. He shoves the guy, as any father would, out of his son's face. The guy falls, feigns injury, feigns attack, feigns assault. This case is thrown out of a lower court, only to later, and we'll get into some of the details in the conversation, only to later have Merrick Garland and Joe Biden's Justice Department come pull the man out of bed months later, out of his home, in the dark, early morning hours of a random weekday in September, and treat him like an animal. He faced a jury of his peers in a trial. The federal government took him to court, and he could have been sentenced to 11 years in prison over a law that's not even applicable in this story. And again, remember, a lower court threw it out, but that couldn't be entered in as evidence. So Mark Houck was acquitted yesterday, and this is the first conversation. I guess he talked to Hannity last night. So the only bummer is we weren't able to be on the air till today. So we weren't able to get the first, but we are the second, I'm happy to say, because of the outstanding work of our executive producer, Fast Eddie. We're the first audio, I guess if you want to say, interview with Mark Houck, and he is a tremendous man. And I don't know about you. I'll speak for myself and say after I heard this, I felt very convicted. I did a lot of thinking. I'm going to do a lot of praying and contemplating. What if it were me? That's all I kept thinking. What if it were me? What if it were my family? This guy's special, and you're going to be really glad you heard this conversation today. Sit tight for that. First, let me tell you, you're going to be grateful to talk to a guy called John Ruhlman if you're looking to save money on health insurance premiums this year. You need to call if you're in a really expensive premium position. If you're spending just gobs of money every month, maybe you're on a set income, and you're paying a fortune for an insurance plan or a premium that you just don't need all the coverage. I mean, maybe you just need something simple. Maybe you're a younger person. You don't need coverage for pregnancies. You don't need coverage for a lot of things that full-blown insurance programs will offer. There's a cheaper way. By the way, he knows how to navigate the ACA plan, Obamacare, and put you on the government plan if that's a better option for you. Bottom line, John Ruhlman, usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com. You log on or call him today. They have access to 80 different insurance companies, 80. So that means there is an insurance company out there, and he knows an insurer that will come in at a much lower rate that you're paying for employees of your small business, you, yourself, your family. If you're paying out of pocket a month, let John put pencil to paper and save you hundreds, maybe thousands. We're talking 30 to 60% on your health insurance premiums. He's a good guy. His wife and his brother have teamed together and built this business over 18 years. usmedicalplan.com. Look for my smiling mug at the website. If you don't see it, that's not the right site. usmedicalplan.com, or call them today. Tell them you heard Chris talking about them. They're going to take great care of you. They know every competitive angle in health insurance. Again, if you're on a fixed income and you need just a supplemental program for your Medicare, Medicaid needs, this is the guy. And those of you who've listened to the show for a while, you know the business I've been doing with Harvey over the last few years. Harvey Durham has personally endorsed John Ruhlman as his successor, and the guy he's asked me to tell you to start working with him. So you're in great hands. That much I know. A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. Really impressive people. You're going to like what they do. usmedicalplan.com, 877-410-4321. I am just elated and sincerely honored to welcome to the show Mark Houck, a gentleman that's been in the news now for some weeks. He's the founder and president of something called the King's Men, which I want to get into in due course. But Mark is most well known to many households across the country now as a pro-life dad who has been active in sidewalk ministry outside Planned Parenthood clinics. And we know that Merrick Garland's DOJ rousts him in a pre-dawn raid of his home. He is put on trial before a jury of his peers in what could have ended in up to 11-year sentencing for something he was, something that was acquitted in a lower court earlier, but we're going to get into all the specifics of it, but I know all of us followed it with great interest. We talked with his attorneys last week, and that phone call ended with, say prayers for Mark, say prayers for the outcome here. Prayers were answered, and he was acquitted yesterday, and I am just so thrilled to welcome Mr. Houck to the show. And sir, I don't know how you must feel, but I am so happy for you, and I know this audience is too. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris, and all glory be to God. It was a great day yesterday. It was a nerve-wracking day, but nonetheless a great outcome. And we're all feeling very blessed here, my wife and my children, my extended family, and the lawyer team, the legal team was such a gift to me. So we're very much rejoicing today, Chris.
I can't imagine. I have so many questions, so let's start at the beginning.
Sure.
When we got to know you and hear about your story, we were told that this was based on an altercation between some crackpot, my word, not yours, 73 years old, getting in your son's face, you and your son peacefully offering some sidewalk ministry out in front of a Planned Parenthood clinic. This guy clearly trying to agitate and taunt you by getting in your son's face, screaming profanity. You naturally, as any father would, shove him out of the way. He does this, I liken it to people jumping out of a car after they've been tapped at an intersection. My neck, screaming that he's been grievously injured or something. You did what any dad would do. But anyway, this was brought up in court. He presses charges. He never shows up in court. This is tossed, dismissed, and you think the story's gone away. Have I got that summary about right?
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. In April 22nd, I believe, of 2022, it was dismissed in the Philadelphia court system. And then about 5 days later, I received a target letter from the DOJ saying, assisting U.S. attorney in Philadelphia, that I was a target of a grand jury investigation.
And the grand jury investigation, you said, okay, as I understand it from your attorneys, what do you need? Give me the date. I'll show up. I'll be wherever you need me to be. And I don't know how long this went on. I understood that from the initial charges being dropped and this being thrown out of court, was this like almost a calendar year before the FBI comes knocking on your door?
Yeah, it was about 6 months, and in fact, it wasn't even. It didn't even play out the way you just described. Actually, the attorneys reached out. Thomas More Society, Matt Heffron reached out. He's a former federal prosecutor. Reached out to the assistant U.S. attorney in Philadelphia, and just said, "You have no case. My client's innocent, and here's case law against it." At the same time, if you want him, no need to bring any agents out to the house. This is at the end of April, beginning of May. No need to do that. He's a peaceful man. He'll come down. We didn't hear from the AUSA. They spoke initially, my attorney, and then we didn't hear from them at all for the next 5 months. In fact, the attorney called me in August of 2022 and said, have you heard from the assistant U.S. attorney? I said, I have not. And he said, I haven't either. And she won't return my calls. So next thing I know, banging on my door at 6:45 in the morning, September 23rd, was the next time I heard from anyone from the Department of Justice.
I have, like I said, I have 1,000 questions. I'll start by asking you, when you do this sidewalk ministry, do you ever think to yourself, the day would come that your government agents, goons would come pounding on your door and pull you out of bed and arrest you? I mean, does that ever occur to you, or was that in the back of your mind at any point?
You know, when you take on evil, Chris, like we do with abortion, fighting pornography, defending traditional marriage, you know the other side isn't happy. But the way you just described and the way it happened was not really how I imagined it. Possibly, it's not the first time I had any interactions with law enforcement. So I'm familiar with the process. This process was completely beyond anything I could imagine.
So you always knew there was a resistance to what you had to say, but I don't know that you ever imagined you'd be viewed or labeled as an enemy of your government. I mean, that's the next level. I mean, having a street altercation with a lunatic guy who presses charges against you is one thing. That's a civil matter. But when you're talking about the FBI at your door at 6:45 in the morning, that's next level stuff. That's scary, Mark, to me. How about you?
Yeah, it was an act of pure terror. I mean, basically that's what it was. I mean, when you talk about 15 unmarked and marked units on your property at dark o'clock in the morning, you're just getting up, just trying to prepare your family for their day, and next thing you know, there's heavy banging on the door. The guns, the amount of guns that were pointed at me, the long guns, the heavy armored vest, the ballistic shields, the ballistic helmets, battering ram, people at the back of my house, on the side of my house. It seemed it was a hostage crisis the way it was going down. So yes, I mean it was scary. I am surprised that one of my children didn't get shot or I didn't get shot. That's how reckless it was.
Can you talk to me about the moments as that's happening? What are you saying? And here's something I often hear, and this has made some people take issue over the years, even when I've said it, that when you hear people say the rank and file of the FBI are good men and women just doing their jobs, they're under orders. How was the experience of rank and file men and women at your door in what you just described? Did you speak with them? Did you ask them what was going on? Did any of them seem compassionate, or was it all transactional? How do you describe the moments?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to take you back. So the banging was just the banging and the doorbell. No one even announced who they were. The FBI should announce themselves. They just banged and said, "Open up the door." And of course, as the guardian of my home, I said, "Well, who is it?" Right? I'm outside. I'm inside the house, and the gentleman, the agent, declares that it's the FBI. Open up. So I said, "Okay. Stay calm. I have 7 babies in here." I could see the sirens. Like, I didn't see the chaos, but it was dark. And I said, "I have 7 babies in here. Please stay calm." So I slowly opened the door, and the first thing I showed them was my hands, because I knew that would be important. When I opened the door and I saw the madness, which was this, raid, I looked at them all and I said, "What are you doing here?" Again, Chris, I wasn't expecting this. I had a target letter, but this is the last thing on my mind.
Of course. So,
and then they said, "Well, you know why we're here." And then I thought about it, and I said, "Oh, you're here because I rescue babies." And then I looked at all of them. And the state troopers, it was just as many state troopers as there were FBI agents. I looked at all of them. I said, "You wouldn't be here if the Trump administration was in the White House."
Wow.
And they all kind of looked down, and no one said anything to me at that point. And then my wife comes down, Chris, and she says, "Do you have a warrant for his arrest?" She was a little more cooler and level-headed than me. And the agent says, "Well, we're taking him with or without a warrant." That's how they plan to take me. And the next thing I know, within 15 minutes, I said, "Can I get some shoes on?" "No." "Can I get some socks on?" "No." "Can I get a sweatshirt on?" "No." "Can I put some underwear on?" Because I just had shorts and T-shirts and flip-flops. And they said, "No." I said, "Well, can I get my rosary?" And they said, "Yes." So I was in the car and out of my home with my kids screaming. my kids crying. The guns were pointed in the threshold of the home, and so the kids were actually at the end of those weapons. So that was my morning on the 23rd.
How do you feel about those people that conducted that business that morning? How do you feel about them? Because this is, I have to just be honest with you. I'm now rethinking what I've kind of said as a pat statement for a lot of years, that the rank and file who are just doing their jobs don't mean you any trouble. Do you agree with that sentiment?
So what I've learned from this process is that there are the many people who said they would not go that day. Some state troopers who were connected to the family were actually given that information, and they had the ability to say that's not something they wanted to do. I'm not so familiar with the FBI, but I imagine many of the FBI who resigned as a result of this potentially, or even other instances that we learned about, whistleblowers and whatnot, have the ability to express their disapproval of this. I don't know about the men that were there and women that were there. All I can tell you is they knew everything about me. And when I got into the car, the unmarked unit to go down to the federal building, I said, "Why were there so many of you?" And they said, "Well, sir, we don't know anything about you. We come prepared for anything." And I said, "I highly doubt that. You're the FBI. How is it you don't know anything about me?" And everyone I talked to in law enforcement said, "Mark, they knew everything about you. They knew everything. They had pictures on you. They knew where you were going, when you were going to be at home. And that's why they came that morning." So I got to tell you, in my heart of hearts, I pray for them. I hope for conversion. I hope that they have the courage to say no to those things in the future.
Have any Republican leaders contacted you? And I'm talking about in Congress. Have you had any kind of congressional or federal interest in opposition to this?
Right away, we had a friend of the family who, former Secret Service agent, works for Senator Grassley, and he was on it right away. In fact, they were talking to me through this mutual friend, and discussing things before they were going public on it. I know Senator Josh Hawley's been very outspoken. I hadn't spoke to him. My own congressman, in a kind of somewhat disjointed way, tried to reach out to me. That's Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. He never really connected with me, never really got on the phone to call me. So I was disappointed with that. But there's been a great outpouring of support with I think 12 senators signed some sort of, demanding answers from the FBI and Justice Department, and then, of course, 25, I think, congressmen. But the only person I connected with was really Senator Grassley's office.
So not your own congressman, not your own United States senators, who at that time during the arrest would have been Senator Pat Toomey, still outgoing, and Bob Casey. Nothing from them.
Yeah, nothing from Senator Bob Casey. Senator Pat Toomey, even though he's outgoing, he did put his name to that list from the 12 or 15 senators. He put his name on that. He did not reach out to me, and I have met him previously. But nothing from Congressman Fitzpatrick on a personal level.
You're detained that morning and taken in. I first of all, just as a matter of legal note, because I don't know, is that true? They can just show up and cuff you and take you in without a warrant? I don't know the process. Is that true?
It's not true, and eventually they ripped off a cover sheet. My wife later told me. But I'm just telling you what they said when my wife asked them. They ripped off a cover sheet, I guess, from the warrant they had, and then before I left, I think the lead agent, the case agent, handed her that cover sheet. So she had something. But that was their initial response to that question. But I don't think they're allowed to take you. As my wife pointed out, that would be kidnapping at gunpoint.
That made the news that morning quickly. We all found out about it. Your wife did some interviews. We reached out to her, tried to get her on the show that day, as a matter of fact. It seems like it was yesterday. I don't. What is for you? Is that just an excruciatingly painful, long process? Does it happen fast? I think you were bailed out relatively quickly, right? Was it that same day? You're taken in and processed in that whole. How does that unfold?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question, and this is really where it gets kind of painful, both physically, emotionally, and spiritually for all of us. I was released on bond that day. The bond was forgiven, as provided I met with all the requests of arraignment and showing up and so forth. But on the way down, I was cuffed, of course. When I got to the federal building, they shackled my feet and they shackled my waist, and then I was cuffed to a table for 6 hours in a really small room with nothing but a table. And that was a very spiritual, uplifting moment for me. I never felt closer to my Lord than I did then. However, it was a really strange situation too, to have that experience and to be in the custody of the FBI and to be treated this way.
And you're in shorts and flip flops, to be clear. I mean, you've been in bed.
Yes, correct. The cuffs were on my ankles, tightly on my ankles, and I had no socks. It was a bit uncomfortable, but it wasn't that uncomfortable that I didn't have the ability to to pray and offer it all up for those that need it, especially my wife and children. So I that's all I could do. About 6 hours go by. There's a preliminary hearing, and then they had every intention to release me, which again they didn't need to humiliate me and put me through all that. If that was their intention, they had every intention to release me on my own recognizance. And about 3 o'clock later that afternoon, now I had to be brought down to U.S. Marshals from the federal building, which is in the same building. And I'm literally still in shackles with my waist and ankles. And I say to the agent, "Is this really necessary?" I could barely move my feet. I'm shuffling my feet, and he didn't really respond to me. But anyhow, I had to go to U.S. Marshals, and they, I don't know if you've ever dealt with U.S. Marshals, that they're not the nicest people. They treat you like you're a criminal, and I felt like that. And then finally I was released, and then I was reunited with my family about 4 o'clock later that afternoon.
Whew, that was my question. Throughout this whole process, was there anyone that seemed compassionate, sympathetic, almost remorseful, like we kind of feel sick that we're doing this? Did you get the sense that anybody felt like they knew this was really heavy-handed and absurd? Anyone?
No one from the Department of Justice. There was one agent, the agent who drove the vehicle down. He shook my hand. He said it was a real pleasure meeting me, because we had a really nice conversation on the way down talking about homeschooling. And
You're kidding.
Like
You're kidding. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Houck, but you were talking with an agent arresting you about homeschooling.
On the way down, we talked about, I was encouraging him to do it and telling him all my experiences with it and how great it was. And he wants to do it. And he shook my hand and he said it was a real pleasure meeting you. And I thought that was an odd thing to say, but I told him it was a joy for me as well.
I know you're a man of God and you're a prayerful guy. You don't sound remotely angry. I mean, you're being treated like an animal. Your family's been terribly upset. This is demoralizing, and yet you said you were closer to God than ever before. Talk to me about what that means.
Yeah, that's a mysterious thing, isn't it? Well, I mean, when you're in that situation, and you think about, the Christ and his journey, and you think of the life of many in the last 2,000 years since his birth on earth, you think of those that were persecuted and those that suffered, and they did it in his name, Jesus Christ's name. So that's a great way to enter in. Or you can do that, or you can do something else, right? You can totally despair, and you can totally, reject God and say, "How could you?" Or you can say, "Why not me? Take up my cross and follow him," right? So I had to enter into that, and I felt like I was at the foot of the cross at Calvary, and I just felt completely united, never before in my life in such a way. Most powerful prayer experience of my life. I prayed the whole 6 hours, didn't stop, and just offered it all up, for my wife and children. I couldn't do anything else but that. It's the only way I could offer something and provide for them when I was taken from them, and not knowing when I would return to them. So that's just the only way I could cope. And it gave me I have to say, Chris, it gave me great peace and joy.
What a remarkable testimony. And one wonders if not only was this experience, your efforts in the pro-life movement, if all of this was to highlight that, but now today for you to offer this kind of testimony, I don't know what your thoughts are on how you process it, but are you being used that way, do you feel?
Yeah, it's still unfolding. Obviously, yesterday was a long day, and we did some shows. This is only the second show, but we did the Hannity show last night, and we're just being open to what God's will is, and we're just trying to be humble and grateful for for the result. We thank God for the jury, which they were incredible.
I did want to go there next, Mark Houck, because this jury, I worried. I will tell you, I talked with one of your attorneys on Friday, and he asked us all to pray, and I did too. And may I be honest? I thought to myself, a jury of your peers in Philadelphia on an issue of a pro-life guy being dragged before a court of law, Merrick Garland's DOJ. I was pretty nervous knowing you were staring down the barrel of 11 years. I thought the inherent bias toward people of faith and the pro-life movement was not in your favor, no matter how impartial a jury they could assemble. But I guess that was wrong, or God certainly answers prayer, and I should have had more faith. I don't know what you were thinking. Did you have any of that trepidation? Because I sure did. I'm cynical, I guess, after covering the news for so long.
Yeah, no, I felt the same thing. In fact, my attorneys, Brian McMonagle, who's done this for years, and Peter Breen, felt the same way. We felt like we had 10 strikes, they had 6, and you can only strike so many out of a 65-person pool. I felt really deflated on Tuesday, thinking we didn't get a great jury. I'm not sure what we got, actually. Frankly, didn't know. But we were hopeful, and they all said that they could be impartial, and you're hoping for that. But frankly, they showed up every day, and we don't know the jury, interviews as far as who was with us at the end. But it appears that almost all of them were with us except one. And God took that juror right out, plucked that juror right out of the situation and replaced it with an alternate. Don't ask me how that all happened, but it did. And we ended up with 12 jurors at around 1:30 p.m. yesterday, and they came back with a verdict an hour later. So it appears that this jury that we were kind of all trepidating about was very good at what they did and saw the truth. Brian McMonagle, I think, is the best criminal defense attorney in the country, and he proved it. He was amazing. And Peter Breen on his side was just a great tandem 1-2 punch. Those guys were incredible. Thomas More Society. I had 6 attorneys behind me. I felt so supported, and they were constantly helping us to understand the process. And yeah, I just give thanks to God for the jury who did a great job, and they saw the truth, and it set us free. It set me free.
The federal government was using something called the FACE Act to charge you, yes. Which, as I understand it, doesn't even apply to the guy that claims he was assaulted by you. True? It doesn't even apply, which, I mean, if you take everything else out, all of this is absurd, but just on its face, this doesn't even technically apply to him, this protection of the FACE Act, even if you accepted the entire storyline. Is that about right?
Yeah, Judge Papert made a comment, Judge Joe Papert, who was wonderful as well. He actually challenged the government and said, you need to go back to Washington, D.C., he said to Sanjay Patel, who basically wrote the manual on the FACE Act statute. And he said, you need to go back to Washington, D.C., because this statute infringes upon the liberty of everyday citizens. And It really gives protection to anyone that would call themselves a reproductive health care provider, even outside the clinic. So the judge even made an argument in the case saying, what's to prevent this act being applied to Mr. Love, who, if I happen to see him in a grocery store and we had an altercation? They said it would apply because they would say that I was hurting him because he's a reproductive health care worker. And he said, this isn't right.
Wait a minute. The government said to the judge, if he had this same incident happen at the grocery store, the federal government could come after you? That's amazing. They said that to the judge.
Well, the judge even was making that analogy, and he was saying, I understand why it's there, because if I was an abortionist and I was killed, at my home or something because I do abortions, and that's how it applied. That would apply, right? Because the person is taking that out on that abortionist. But someone who's an escort, a volunteer, it shouldn't have the same application. And the judge was making that point and said, you need to go back to Washington, D.C. and fix this.
I'm stirred and moved. I praise God that you had a judge and a jury who still believe that rights matter, that speech matters, that was fair here. It so easily could have gone the other way. What's scarier, being detained at your home in the early morning hours, or facing 11 years in federal prison on trial before a jury of your peers? What's a more frightening moment? They both seem terrifying to me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it is terrifying, but at the same time, like I said, when you're doing the work of the Lord and you're in His will, Chris, you can accept those things, and if you know that it's come upon you because of that, there's a great ability to accept all that and move forward with confidence and peace. And if I was living for myself, or I was living for my own agenda, or trying to make money or whatever,
Yes.
Not that there's anything wrong with making money, but if I was just serving my own self, then I could see your point. But in this instance, it was an invitation. I've always said, people keep coming up to me, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I said, don't be sorry. I'm not sorry it happened. I'm grateful. It's been a blessing. It's been a gift. And so in so many ways it has. Yes, it's not been without its hardship. It's definitely been anxious moments at times. But in the end, it's been a true blessing upon me and my family. And so, we're just trying to proclaim that now and let people see that in the midst of the storm, there's great peace and there's great hope in all of it.
This is arguably one of the most convicting interviews I've ever done in my life, Mr. Houck. I am so blessed to make your acquaintance, and I know this audience is blessed to hear your testimony, sir. I guess before we go, because I said I wanted to mention it, the King's Men and your work you were doing before this whole mess, thekingsmen.org. Talk to us about it.
Sure. Well, the mission continues. We're a men's ministry, designed to help build up men, to help them be better fathers, better husbands, better sons, better brothers. And we do that through a variety of men's groups around the country. We do retreats for men. And then, of course, we take a stand against cultural evils. And so we ask men to stand in the gap and to go into difficult places and to defend the common good. And so we continue to do that. They asked me right after the came out of the courthouse, and they said, are you going to go back to the clinics? I said, I'll be there next Wednesday. So, we're back at it. The mission continues. And people can learn more at thekingsmen.org if they want to learn more.
What a testimony. What a testimony. You are, I am, I'm blown away. I am blown away by your testimony and your composure, sir. I am. And I thank you. Sincerely, thank you for the example you've shown me. I've learned so much from you in this conversation. I hope others have too. Thank you for your bravery and your willingness to stand firm in the truth.
Amen. Well, thank you, brother. I'm grateful. Again, all glory to God. And Chris, you keep up the great work, and thanks for allowing me this platform to share. I'm blessed to be with you today.
Dr. Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental, Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route for you Philly folks. You know where it is. Bob made this smile of mine years ago, and when I say made, I mean he did. He crafted the smile. His handiwork did it. Cosmetic dentistry is his forte. Named top cosmetic dentist in the entire Philadelphia region, multiple years, almost every single year that it's been voted on by his peers in dentistry. For the last 10 years, I've been talking about him. So I get compliments literally all the time on my teeth, thanks to Bob's work. If you want a professional whitening kit at cost, meaning a huge savings, he typically charges $500 for this thing, because there's labor and blah, 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 blah. He takes all of that out. And for you, just for you who listen to the podcast, if you happen to visit Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, Pennsylvania, you're somewhere near, he'll give it to you for just his cost, $200. So it's a professional teeth whitening kit that he will talk with you about and administer. You just got to go in and meet with him. At Williamsburg Dental, you'll get it for $200. I also would just say, if you need a general dentist and you've put off dentistry for a long time, you have to meet Bob. He is simply the kindest guy you're ever going to meet. He does not hurt you. He's not going to judge you. And no matter how embarrassed you are of your teeth or the state of your teeth, he's seen it all. He's not going to look in your mouth and go, oh my gosh, he's the kindest guy. Listen, I can't be personal friends with a guy who hurt me or gave me a bad experience over the years. He never has. Everyone I send to him, friend, colleague, neighbor, family member, everyone I've sent to Bob raves about Bob, and you will see why if you call Williamsburg Dental, 610-353-2700, 610-353-2700, or williamsburg-dental.com. Cackle Britches, the woman we're pretending is vice president, rolled out yesterday to talk economy and energy, and was, as usual, just brilliant.
We are doing the work that is about collaborating around the small businesses that will need to do the work that will be the result of all the trillions of dollars we're putting into the infrastructure of our country, including the almost $1 trillion that we're going to be putting into a whole new economy that is called a clean energy economy.
What is the applauding? Do you think she brought someone along? Just start clapping. Listen to these words one more time and tell me what she actually says at any point.
We are doing the work that is about collaborating around the small businesses that will need to do the work that will be the result of all the trillions of dollars we're putting into the infrastructure of our country.
I mean, that's remarkable. We're doing the work of collaborating around the small businesses who need to do the work. I have never in my adult life listened to any other person say so many words and yet nothing at all. This is some kind of remarkable skill. I mean, yes, Biden confuses things, wanders off, but there's still words. Like, yeah, he may say, I'm hungry for cantaloupe, and he's, at a peace accord signing or something. Like, yeah, maybe he's got dementia, but he still says things that make sense, even if out of context. She just takes words like it's a big boggle game and keeps producing them, stringing them together in these kinds of stream of consciousness things, and they never go anywhere. But they're all kind of sewn together in a way where there's a couple of people that will applaud it, and she really thinks she said something profound. She wasn't done, though.
Let's talk about how you get a line of credit. Who of us grew up with our parents talking about a phrase, line of credit, right? These are things you learn if someone takes the time to teach you because they know.
This is the woman that's the heartbeat away from the husk. These are the things you learn because you know, right? Who here was taught the phrase line of credit? Who was taught the phrase, right? These are things you learn, you know. We're working to do the work around the work. She continued.
When we talk about our small businesses, it not only is it intergenerational, but also we've got entrepreneurs in their teens and 20s to families who have been doing this for generations, and our seniors. And so it's really, that's also what's also exciting about our small businesses and who they are, because it spans the generations in addition to being intergenerational.
Spans the generations. It spans the generations. We have teens and their parents entrepreneurially spanning the generations, intergenerationally working together, which is two different age groups of entrepreneurs working together in an intergenerational way to do the work of the working. Oh my, one more.
Are these new green buses going to keep their signature yellow color?
These are going to remain yellow school buses because who doesn't love a yellow school bus? They will remain yellow, but their heart will be green.
She's William J. Lepetamain in Blazing Saddles. She's the exact same character. Just utter nonsense. We got to save our phony baloney jobs. We must. I mean, William J. Lepetamain, played by Mel Brooks in Blazing Saddles. This is the character. He just said, heads of state must. He just gropes for words that sound official. Has no idea what he's doing or saying. John Kennedy, the Louisiana senator, joined Jesse Waters, had this summary of Cackle Britches.
Let's bring in Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. What is going on here, Senator?
I'm not sure, Jesse. I know the vice president. I served with her on the Judiciary Committee. I like the vice president. I do not think she's been a good vice president. For whatever reason, every time she speaks, she shows us how much she doesn't know. I think she must do her research on Twitter.
Look, this is not part of the commercial, but I do have to say something personally for a minute. I just saw that Bed Bath & Beyond, one of the companies that tossed our friend Mike Lindell from their stores a few years ago because, he had a different point of view than they did. There's a certain justice in knowing that Bed Bath & Beyond is slowly spiraling the drain. Another 140-some stores have closed. And Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com is going gangbusters. He's created MyStore.com, MyPillow.com, and this guy's business model, which has always been pro-America, free speech, and direct-to-you, high-quality stuff made here in the country, and they put a premium on customer service. He partnered with stores like Kohl's and Bed Bath & Beyond for a long time, and then an election didn't go the way they wanted. People didn't react to the election the way they wanted, and so they decided to toss Mike. Well, Mike, undeterred, and his faith in Christ, he soldiered on, and he has built this brand called My Pillow that everybody knows. Everybody knows the jingle. Everybody knows Mike. What you may not know, and I didn't know until we partnered with them, is all the products they offer. My coffee, which I'm drinking this morning, literally having some right now, my coffee's delicious. Tastes great. They have all kinds of different flavors. Somebody asked me about the K-Cup. I don't think they have that yet, but they may. I'm going to look more into that and see if that's coming, if it's not already here. But we've been sleeping on the Giza Dream Sheets and love them. I mean, Christine said to me again last night as she got into bed, I love these sheets. Seriously, that was an honest conversation. She wore... I tease people about wearing slippers out of the house. That's sort of where I draw a line. Christine said these MyPillow slippers that we got her are so comfortable. She said, I forgot I was wearing them, and I wore them out to the gas station. She was a little embarrassed of herself that she did it, but I'm not judging you if you do. I'm just saying, she said, oh, yeah, I forgot I had them on. I love them. She's wearing them all over the house. Dean loves his MyPillow dog bed. I sent gifts to my entire team from MyPillow. They love the dog beds. They love the sheets. They love the travel, go anywhere pillows. And there's so much more. Robes and towels. Just dried off today with the super absorbent towel from MyPillow. Go to MyPillow.com and use my promo code ChrisPodcast. That's how they know you listen to the show, and the show gets credit when you enter Chris Podcast, but more importantly, you get a big discount, up to 66%. You'll save some percentage on everything you order when you use Chris Podcast, up to 66% on some items. So be sure to use that to save and let them know you support the show, which I really appreciate. Or you can call today, 800-932-5056, 800-932-5056, MyPillow.com. Not for nothing, just briefly, I wanted to address something that I have been kind of bringing up nonchalantly, casually, because I don't know anything more than you know, and it's always kind of weird to me. Did you happen to see that yet again another food production facility has come under attack? Egg producer Hillendale Farms said in a Monday statement published on the company's website that its team continues to work closely with the local fire departments and state officials. A recent fire at an egg facility. Fire at the Hillendale Farm property in Bozrah, Connecticut, reported about 1 p.m. Saturday, drew dozens of firefighters from the area. Officials said the blaze was extinguished Saturday night, cause not immediately clear. I've said to a friend of mine I haven't even really said it that much on the show because I didn't want to sound crazy. I don't want to be accused of sounding like a kook. But I'm always happy to know that when I feel this way, I swear it's like, I'm not, I know it's easy for me to say, I've been saying, I've brought it up a few times on the show, but I don't know because I'm not there. When we see these fires break out at food production facilities, I always find it weird. I know that Tucker Carlson, I'm really glad that we kind of share a brain on this or creative forces on this or whatever, because I didn't see this, but last night late, somebody sent me a clip because this is something I've been saying to some people privately. What is going on with all these food production plants catching fire and having these explosions? And does this seem weird? Well, apparently Tucker thinks it's weird too, and he addressed it yesterday on the show. Listen.
The next month, the headquarters of one of this country's largest organic food distributors was destroyed in a fire, cause unknown. The next month, in a single week actually, 2 separate private plane crashes took out 2 separate food processing centers. One plane hit a General Mills plant in Georgia. The other plane hit a food plant in Idaho. By the way, back in February, a boiler explosion obliterated a potato processing plant in Oregon, and so on. So even people who aren't given to connecting the dots, who don't think of themselves as conspiracy nuts, begin to wonder, is there something here? But no one could tell. The Biden administration had no answers and no way to get to the answers because they had no data. And that's interesting because the Biden administration tracks a lot of things, the things that it cares about, the race and ethnicity and sex life, for example, of every person in America. Do we have enough trans-Pacific Islanders playing woodwinds in major symphonies? How about gay Southeast Asians in long-haul trucking? These are the questions that concern the bean counters in the Biden administration. And yet at the same time, that same administration keeps no real records about the infrastructure of our food supply. April, the next month, the headquarters...
No, that's exactly right. So that's Tucker last night. He went through the laundry list of all of these attacks, but there have been many. And I would encourage you to go back and watch him chronicling all that. The Biden administration plans to let the coronavirus public health emergency expire in May. Did you know we're still in the midst of an emergency? So it's going to be allowed to expire in May, the emergency. CNN recording the worst ratings in 9 years. If you didn't think it could get worse, they've managed somehow. Remember they had the, I don't know, that little twerpy guy, Jonathan, what's his name, or I don't remember, and then the Delta Burke of News doing the morning show, and then they said, oh, well, this morning show's not working. Let's bring in Don Lemon and Caitlin Collins from the White House briefing room, and let's put them on the air. According to Nielsen, CNN is averaging now 444,000 viewers. They haven't seen a total that low since May of 2014. Fox News has garnered a whopping 1.4 million viewers for the same week. By the way, MSNBC not far behind with 943,000. So it's not as though there's not a hunger or an appetite for left-wing programming. It's that CNN is so objectively bad, even the left doesn't care for them. That's quite a statement. So CNN circling the drain. Colorado baker who won a partial U.S. Supreme Court victory. We've talked with this gentleman before, Jack Phillips, Masterpiece Cake Shop. Remember, he refused to bake the gay couple's wedding cake because of his Christian faith. Well, now he has lost an appeal. The U.S. Supreme Court sided with him on that, but he's lost his latest legal fight. They keep coming at him out there in Colorado, trying to come up to new ways to shut him down and make his life hell. And Colorado is governed by leftists. Their courts are stacked full of leftists. The Colorado Court of Appeals ruled that some person called Adam Scardina, because of course, formerly a man, became a woman, went to Jack and said, make me a birthday cake. And Jack was like, what? Yeah, I'm a dude who wants to be a chick, and I want to have a birthday cake celebrating I'm a chick now. Make the cake, Jack. And he said, yeah, I know. I'm afraid I don't want anything to do with that. And Autumn decided to make a federal case out of it, literally, and not surprisingly, the Colorado Court of Appeals ruled Jack's got to make the cake. He's in the wrong. Cake is not speech. Make the cake, Jack, says the Colorado Court of Appeals. It found the state law that makes it illegal to refuse to provide services to people based on protected characteristics does not violate your practice or your right to practice and express your religion. Isn't that interesting? So just pay attention to this for a minute. Colorado state law makes it illegal to refuse to provide services to people based on protected characteristics like race, religion, or sexual orientation. So when he said, I don't want to bake a cake for your gender transformation deal, I just don't get behind it. I can't be a part of that. Colorado's Court of Appeals said Jack's a bigot and needs to be prosecuted as such. Got to be forced to make the cake. So this is going to end up before the Supreme Court again. And the Supreme Court has not weighed in on this yet, but they likely will. They're going to have no choice. In 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission had acted with anti-religious bias in enforcing their anti-discrimination law against Phillips after he refused to bake the cake for the gay wedding. The justices called the commission unfairly dismissive of Phillips' religious beliefs, but they didn't rule on the larger issue of whether a business can invoke religious objections to refuse service. So they didn't rule on the bigger issue. I have to do business with you for your gay wedding. I have to. So they were ruling on the very narrow definition of what is speech. So they ruled against the Colorado Civil Rights Commission in 2018 and said they acted with anti-religious bias, but they did not. They did not rule on whether or not a business. So technically, this has not been a settled matter by the U.S. Supreme Court. Can I say, I don't want to provide my services for your gay wedding. I don't want to provide my services for your transgender coming out party. I don't want to do that. I have a fundamental religious objection to what you're doing. I don't want my business associated with it. Now, the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on whether that is speech or not. They haven't done so yet, technically. So we will watch that with great interest. Meanwhile, Utah's governor, Spencer Cox, has signed legislation over the weekend that bans youth from receiving double mastectomies and chemical castration and other monstrous stuff, and also allows families to receive scholarships to pay for education outside the public school system. Huge. So like Iowa and Arizona and I believe West Virginia, now Utah has joined the fray and decided to hand taxpayer money back to taxpayers and let them spend it on their child and their education wherever they choose to go, public school or otherwise. That's huge. As well as, now we're not going to allow you to do Frankenstein monster experiments on children in our state. So good for Governor Cox of Utah. And Kevin McCarthy is supposed to meet with the Husk tomorrow to discuss the debt ceiling. Ronna McDaniel says, this is it. I get it. I'm only going to serve this last term, and yes, I understand we need to get better at ballot collection before Election Day. I hear you, says Ronna.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the Republican Party plans to address this, which is a need to focus on early voting. What tactically can you do to change that?
You know, I think there's been a lot of misinformation on that, actually, because we beat the Democrats in Florida on early voting in North Carolina. We just won a seat in California using ballot harvesting, but we need to replicate in other states what's working well in states like Florida.
Yeah, she did fine. A lot of misinformation about election 2022. Ronna kicked ass, folks. You just weren't paying attention out there. It's a remarkable. I mean, if you thought the left was the only political side good at gaslighting, meet Ronna McDaniel. Hey, I don't know what everybody's complaining about. We did great in 2022. Oh, okay. I mean, why shouldn't she have another term? You know the number of people that are just furious? They can't, livid. People reaching out to me just livid that she got a fourth term. And by the way, it wasn't even close. It's not like it was close. Ronna McDaniel got 111 votes. Harmeet got 50-something. It wasn't even close. So the Thurston and Lovey Howell Cologne and Cufflink establishment Republican donor class that constitutes the RNC, they ain't you and me. They're not voters in the classic sense. They're not out there with unwashed masses. They're still clinking their champagne glasses and polishing their cufflinks and talking from their bottom jaw about their portfolios and whatnot on the main line. That's still very much the Republican Party, I'm sorry to say. You'll know they've changed when people like Mark Houck are front and center.
The Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.